Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are on the dev server for the next major update of War Thunder, good old update storm warning. This dev server has come out a bit earlier than a lot of the other dev servers, but it still has a ton of content on it, and we're going to be going through it in a series of videos over the next few days. So the first set of videos will be the specific vehicles, so new ground vehicles, new aviation, new naval vehicles, so on and so forth, and then we'll do individual videos looking at either mechanics or individual vehicles. So if there is something that you are specifically looking for, that's how it's all set up. So over the next few days, there'll just be a ton of stuff. Pick and choose what you want to look at in terms of what you're interested when it comes to the next major update. Now, since this is the first video out of a string of videos that we're doing, understand that this is the dev server. Things do change a lot. And usually it's like engines, it's ammunition type, stuff like that. So what you see here is a representation of what is coming to the game, but probably won't be the final product. So always just take that in mind. And as always, if you do enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started with the first ground vehicle that is coming to the game. We have the Mk.IV. This is a post-World War II SPH that was developed and built by America and exported to pretty much everybody over the globe, which is why in War Thunder in the next major update we're getting 6 different M44s. They are all the same, which is kind of ridiculous. You have the American one, and the American one you will find in the tech tree at rank 3 right here between the sluggers and the M10, and then you have a German one which is right here, and it's at the same rank, same BR. They all are. This one is actually folded with the 88mm, which is kind of fun. The British also get an M44, which is once again exactly the same. I'll just start showing the tech trees. So this one goes between the Achilles and the Avenger. Japan gets one, and it goes in between the NATO and the M36 at rank 3. Then Italy also gets one in the left-hand line, surprisingly, over here between the Chaffee and the Breda. And France gets one too. France actually gets one in the right-hand line between the M10 and the M36. This is also the Belgian tank destroyer, the M44. So that's part of the Benelux stuff that they've added. Kind of cool to see these vehicles in the game. So yeah, there's 6 of them that are being added. So the vast majority of the tech trees in War Thunder will have an M44 in them. And that's just nuts. It has a huge crew. It has a ton of guys over here, 7 in total. They all have different uniforms depending on which tech tree you look in. There's a guy on a 50 cal up here, chilling, and then the main gun is a 155mm M45 cannon. This is an SPH. It's a donk machine. It's actually surprisingly got pretty good traverse on the gun. It has absolutely no armor, as you can imagine. It will get overpressured by anything that gets even close to it, and it also uses the M107 shell. This vehicle doesn't actually get the TF or the VT 107, so it just gets the standard one, which has 61mm of pen and also 9 kilos of TNT equivalent. If you want to meme about, you also have a smoke shell, so you can just make people really annoyed at you. So it's generally looking like quite fun. This is becoming kind of like the new Sherman, where everybody gets one in its own way. I just want to show you the traverse, because it's obviously quite important for non-turreted vehicles to still be able to get on target. But you can see here the actual whole kind of like central shell turns, so it isn't stuck as badly as a bunch of other vehicles can do. It all rotates in the center. And the other thing I do have to mention is the targeting speed on this thing is actually pretty good for an SPH. You can see the gun actually moves pretty well for this type of vehicle. It's one of the issues that a lot of these SPHs have, which is their actual turret traverse. The mobility of it as well is technically based on a Bulldog. You can kind of tell that from the way that the vehicle looks. And yeah, it's actually pretty mobile. It traverses very well. The gun overall moves very well. So I think this one actually is going to be quite fun. The only real question is, are you okay with spading out 6 of them? Because that's basically what you're going to end up doing. So that's one of the major vehicles of this update. One of the other ones for America is the RDF LT. Now, this is part of the series of projects that also birthed the HSTVL. It's very similar to it in terms of it. We'll actually just get it up here. There are differences, though. Even though they're the same BR, they do have kind of positives and negatives from each other. So first of all, if we have a look at the RDF LT, there we go. One of the things that you may have noticed on it, which is different from the HSTVL, is the turret is very different. And this means that the RDF LT loses the smoke grenades, and it also, at the same time, loses the general armor profile. So this one has 107 millimeters of effective thickness, where the RDF only has 75. So it's a lot easier to go through. Internally, the crew is actually pretty much set up in the same way, apart from the commander is more centrally mounted in the RDF. Understand that the gunner and the driver are still in the hull though, so you can go hull down, and if somebody doesn't overpressure you, you can actually have great survivability in this. The two other factors that are different between the vehicles is engine power and also ammunition. So the HSTVL only has 26 rounds of ammunition. And recently they added a HEVT shell to it, which means that you kind of have to split your APF SDS and your HEVT. The RDF LT has access to the same rounds, the same gun, but it has access to 60 rounds of ammunition. So way more in this carousel autoloader that it uses. It also has exactly the same reload and exactly the same other features, which is really nice. So it basically gets double the amount of ammunition compared to the HSTVL. But it loses out quite aggressively on the mobility. This vehicle only has a 350 horsepower engine and can go a max speed of 55 kilometers an hour, whereas the HSTVL, if you actually have it spaded, which I don't, so sorry about that, but basically it has a way bigger engine than the other one, as you can see if I just put in all of the wonderful ones. You can see here 650 horsepower compared to a 350 horsepower, and even though the HSTVL is a little bit heavier because of the extra armor on the turret, it still motors about way better. But the RDF won't make that hissing noise that you have from the HSTVL because it's a diesel engine and not a whirlybird, which the HSTVL is. So overall, it's positives and negatives, or I would generally say they're equal, but this one is a premium that is going to be coming in at rank 7, so this one will efficiently research the whole of the tech tree, and if you already have the clickbait, then of course you can run it together, kind of like people do with the T80 UD and the 2S38. The next vehicle to have a look at in ground is the Panzer Haubitz 2000. So the Panzer Haubitz is one of those vehicles that many have looked forward to for a long time. Since we got the PLZ-05 and also stuff like the VDAR, it was very obvious that the Panzer Haubitz was coming in. This is kind of the quintessential, I suppose you'd class it as Western NATO SPH that isn't an M109 that people know about, and it's because it's farmed all over the world and because it's from Germany. It has a 1,000 horsepower engine to move around this 60-ton vehicle. The chassis itself does look unique, but it kind of looks like it's based off an enlarged kind of Marder chassis, and the gun is the 155mm Rheinmetall L52. Now, what's interesting about this one is it actually has an assisted loader, so your crew skills do matter in terms of loading the vehicle. It isn't just a fully automatic loader, at least right now. It does have a bit of gun depression, so you will be able to shoot down, and the shells that this thing fires are pretty nuts. It's the M107 once again, so the same one we saw on the M44. It also has the smoke shell and the VT, which is really nice, but it also gets the 155mm OE F3, which has 9 kilos of explosive mass, and the major difference between them being the muzzle velocity. And this means that a vehicle like this, it's a lot easier to be accurate with the gun because you have so much more muzzle velocity. The 107 is at 563 meters per second, whereas the OEF3 is at 935. This thing also has thermals, but as you can see, it actually says that it only has MVDs. Obviously, these vehicles aren't finished yet, so just take that into account. And the other part is this has a laser rangefinder, so it's just going to, you don't have to worry about aiming. Once you get this modification, you just hit that button and then bang, and whatever you're looking at just dies, which is why overpressure with SPHs, it can be very fun. It also has some smoke grenades, 8 of them overall, pretty decent mobility, and the targeting speed is not great, and the gun isn't stabilized, but it's an SPH. Like, what do you expect from these larger vehicles? There is also some other Panzer Haubitzers in the game. So we have the Hungarian one, which actually has a really cool camo. This one has the full-on camouflage net. You can't take it off right now, but hopefully in the future you can. But I don't think you want to. This looks really, really cool on the vehicle. I'm not running, by the way, DirectX 12. I'm having frame rate issues with it, and I'm not running ray tracing. Everything else is maxed, so just to let you know. But yeah, this is the Hungarian 2000, and you'll find it here in the tech tree in rank 5, and there's also an Italian Panzerhaubitze 2000 in the tech tree itself, which isn't here on the dev server. So it's in the files, but it just isn't on the dev server. If you want to know where the German Panzerhaubitze is in the tech tree, you'll find it just before the Raketen Automat, which is an awesome vehicle. There we go. Which is in the area. So yeah, at 7.7, this thing will be very brutal. It will be very good and fun to play. The armor, of course, won't stand up, but that's not why you use these things. You use these things to just wander around and just click the button and watch whatever you hit just explode. The Strela is another set of vehicles that are being added to every single tech tree. So basically, this vehicle is the one from the Soviet tech tree, you know, the Strela 10M, which went up in BR about 3 or 4 times, has the very powerful missiles, the 9M37M, and it looks like it's getting shared out across the board. So the Germans are getting it, and as I said, this is exactly the same as the other ones. This is the third 10.3 AA for the Germans, the 9A35M. For the British, they're actually getting the Indian version of the Strela, which is quite cool. You'll find it here, coupled with the Osa, which was just added, another Indian SPAA. It has the best camo out of all of them. Really enjoy the quad color from the Indians. I think it looks really nice. And then also, Italy is getting a Strela right here too, in the form of the Hungarian one that has come in. So a lot of Strelas, just like the M44, getting used across the place, and this isn't a surprise. You know, we've talked about the fact that a lot of these nations used a lot of the same technology, and also there is a distinct problem in the game right now in terms of a lot of vehicles being able to take over the game from a CAS point of view, so adding these AAs kind of helps them out. So that's why they're getting spread around the place. The German one is specifically the GDR one, which is, of course, the East German one, which is kind of cool. Then for USSR, we actually have a chunky boy. Now, I don't know what it is, but this one looks way thicker than it actually is. This is the BMD-4M. Now, the BMD-4M was created by the Russians for a few reasons. First of all, they wanted to up the engine, so this engine is a bit more powerful than the standard BMD-4, and also they added a bit more armor, so crew survivability increased a little bit. You can see the composite screen here and also the high hardness rolled armor on it. But the main reason why they built the BMD-4M was commonality of parts, and this is something that's super important in standard warfare, not just from like a Second World War perspective, but a modern perspective, where if you have multiple different vehicles, you want them to have similar parts, so then it's easier to manufacture them, easier to repair them, and all of these general things. So if you actually have a look at the BMP-3, this one has a UTD-29 diesel 500 horsepower engine. The BMD-4M has exactly the same diesel engine, and also they have the similar guns, the similar secondaries, all of these different things. They even have the same transmission, which is a huge downgrade compared to the standard BMD-4, because once again, commonality just means that they can keep these vehicles going even after they take damage. So this is a premium. It's at 9.3 in the Russian tech tree. You can find it at rank 6, so it won't be efficient to research everything in the game, but it will be able to research everything pretty well apart from these. I just don't know why you buy this over something like the 2S38. Maybe there's something that I'm missing. But, you know, it has good optics. It has the updated damage model too, so it has the autoloader modeled. It has the FCS modeled, which is kind of cool, and also the driver controls. The vehicle can fire on the move with the ATGM, which is very powerful. The 9M117M1, and then obviously the HE2s. You can remove the ERA if you want to, if you're not interested in having that extra bulk on the vehicle, if you feel like it's slowing you down, so you can take off the composite screen and everything else. And then also, at the same time, you can, you know, run around with the NVDs and the Scout and the laser and the smoke and just have a great time. It's just, I don't understand, as I said, why you would use this thing compared to the other premiums that are there. The other thing to also mention about the BMD4M is it still has the same problem as the BMD4, where it is very limited on the amount of tandem ATGMs that you can take. So you have to be a little bit careful in terms of how much you want to use in the game. For Britain, you just have the Strela and the M44. You do have a pretty cool aircraft that we'll get to later. And then also for Japan, you have for ground just the M44 once again. So the only difference being the camouflages, and also, of course, them having access to the different uniforms, which is pretty cool. China has some interesting stuff. So first of all, the T26 for China. Now this is the premium one and also the standard tech tree one. They have updated the models of these, so they're now different from the standard T26 that you can see here. So this is the 1939 T26 in the Soviet tech tree. In the Chinese tech tree, they've added some lights to it and also added a 7.62mm AA gun on the top. So technically now, the Chinese T26 is better than the standard T26. It's not a huge difference, let's be honest, but it's just kind of cool to make them a little bit more unique. And this one is now more true to the vehicle that the Chinese used during the time where they had them. So overall, that's kind of cool. You also have a new SPAA system. This is the HQ-17. Now, the only way I can really talk about this is talking about the Tor itself. So the Tor M1 has been in the Chinese tech tree for a while. It's one of those which is designed to be quite a long-range SPAA. It has a radar on it. It has some big old receivers, but the HQ-17 is different in several ways to it. First of all, they both have the updated model now, so that's really cool. And the HQ-17 has a slightly different radar. So the Tor has the 9K330 TA, which has the 27 range and 360 and 64. And then this has the 360 by 60 38 kilometer HQ-17 TA model radar. So technically it is better than this, not by a huge amount, but by a decent amount. Another thing that this radar can do compared to the Tor is supposedly it can detect incoming munitions. So instead of just detecting planes, it can also detect whether bombs are coming in, whether it matters or not, because you don't have any smoke grenades, so you can't really do anything about it, but at least you'll know when you're going to die, so that's kind of cool. The next part is the missiles themselves. So right now, when it comes to these missiles, they are pretty similar. The 9M331s, which the Tor uses, and then the HQ-17 that the HQ-17 uses. The major difference between them is the HQ-17 has 15 kilometers of launch range, whereas the Tor M1s only have 12 kilometers of them. Also, the missile guidance time is better on the HQ-17, so technically this missile should be able to go further than the 9M331. That's the major difference, at least by the stat cards. I'm sure there'll be other differences too. The other thing that's cool about the Tor M1 and also this vehicle is you can lock onto multiple targets at the same time, and it also has a really cool it has a really cool way of firing the missile. So you can see the missiles down here at the bottom. If you actually have a look at it, it fires it up and then down over there, which is really cool. Now, you can see it's actually locked onto two targets here at the same time. The missiles technically are SACLOS, so you can like guide them to different places, which is pretty nice. But yeah, it's I just really like the firing and then the up that you can see here. Like it goes upwards and then out. It's pretty cool. So just a nice little thing that's on the vehicle itself. So yeah. I don't know how useful it'll be compared to the Tor. I mean, the Tor has its issues in the game, and I think this one will have its issues too, but who knows at the end of the day. Italy just gets 3 vehicles that we've already seen across the board, so nothing really new there. I'll just reset the good old camera, and overall, you know, it's nice to see Italy get new things, but it's just a little bit dull, isn't it? When it comes to France, though, my stat card has just disappeared. There we go. France is getting a new light tank, which is a thick boy, I think is probably the way that we put it. This is the VBCI. It has the 25mm Oerlikon KBA-B02. If you're familiar with the Italian tech tree, you'll find stuff like the Oerlikon on the VBC PT2, which this vehicle is very similar to. It's highly mobile, it's got a very high fire rate on that 25, and it also has an APFS DS round, which pens up to 92mm, which is really nice on dealing with pretty much everything apart from T80s. So it can deal with pretty much everything else. Also has thermals, LWSLR, scouting, you know, drones. It has all the common things that these light tanks have at these BRs. It also has a 550 horsepower engine for this behemoth, and even though it's pretty big, it's not crazy heavy compared to some of the other vehicles that are around. And that's because there's a lot of empty space in it, since it's designed to carry people as well. So it does have the updated DM. You do have some ammo here, and also the vertical aiming. Actually, no, does it? It doesn't really have the updated DM, my bad. But I'm pretty sure it's supposed to have it. It just doesn't right now. The armor on the side is 35mm of composite screen, and then 52 at the front. So it'll stop some autocannon stuff, but nothing really. And since this thing is absolutely huge, it's going to get shot up quite easily. The main thing with this is you need to use the stabilized 25mm to shoot first before you get annihilated. But it'll be a fun vehicle, and at 9.3 there are some pretty fun vehicles to run with it, and I'm personally looking forward to it. The other part is the smoke grenade arrangement is kind of cool. So you have these smoke grenades, so you have 2 going front, 2 on the side, and then front and side again, and then you have some on the booty. So at the back here, technically it could like throw smoke to, I suppose, get soldiers out of the back, which in game might actually look really cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed the VBC. This also should have a pretty nice commander view up here, and also this, which is the not active protection system, but passive protection system that this vehicle has. If it's the same one as on the Brennus, which it seems to be, it'll be worthless, so it's not even worth talking about. The Swedish get access to a new CV90. This is the CV90 Mk.IV. The big difference between this and other CV90s is this gets access to Spike LR2 missiles. This is something that a lot of other vehicles have. The Neymar, the Puma, the Mk.IV, all of these vehicles have these types of missiles now. So this is the Swedish equivalent to those. What it's based off of is the CV90-30, so it's much more similar to the 90-30 than it is to the STRF series, which kind of makes me sad, because that means that it has access to the 30mm instead of the 40mm, and the 40mm has a lot more oomph, a lot more penetration, a lot more post-pen damage, whereas this 30, it has a pretty low fire rate. You need to get the APF-SDS for it to be worth it, and you'll still struggle against certain targets. Now, luckily for this thing, it has the spikes, and as we know, the spikes have been buffed several times. This one has access to 6 of them on the vehicle, and now they're at a position where they're pretty powerful. I recently spaded the Puma, the new Puma basically, which has access to the spikes. They were very good, and they worked incredibly well. I'm pretty sure this vehicle will be the same, and since you don't have to modify them out, like you don't have to research them, it means that you get them stock, which is quite nice. This thing also has some pretty good thermals, has some nice laser rangefinders, and also smoke grenades on it too, which will help it out. One of the things that also is interesting and different compared to the other CV90s and also the STRFs is the engine on this. This thing has a 1000 horsepower engine, which seems kind of crazy because the CV90-30 Fin has access to a 625 horsepower diesel, The STRF 9040 has a 550 horsepower engine. This one has a 1000 horsepower Scania DS16. And the transmission is the same. It's the Perkins X300. But the other part of it that is interesting is it also is way heavier. So the spikes and the launcher, and I'm guessing some other parts like the commander sight and maybe some additional armor on the front here, they add 10 tons worth of mass to the CV90 Mark IV. So this is more of a chunky boy. It's way more armed in the form of the spikes, but its survivability is probably going to be a bit less because it's not going to be as mobile. We'll have to see as the game goes on if this horsepower on this engine makes a difference to get it mobile and moving around. But to be honest, it feels very similar right now to stuff like the CV9030, which we already have in the game. The last vehicle for ground, oh, by the way, the CV9030 Mark IV is after the bill. So it's not in the left-hand line, it's in this line instead. For the last vehicle, we have a new Namer. So we had the Namer 30, which has kind of the exposed gun, the 30mm and the spikes. The Namer Tsrikhon, and however I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it wrong, so I apologize. I'm just going to call it the Rickon. So the Rickon that we have right here is a turreted version of the Namer 30. It is very similar to it, apart from this area has changed. It still has the Bushmaster 2 Mk.IV, the 30mm, with access to the Mk.IV, which is quite a nice penning 30mm. It has really good thermals, the LWSLR, and of course it has the spikes as well. So the spikes, you only have 4 of them, so a lot less than others, but still enough to be able to make an impact. There is also another key difference between this and the other Namer, and it is the Trophy HV APS system, which means that you can stop a lot of incoming threats, which usually aren't APF-SDS, because APF-SDS usually has a higher velocity than 1,000 meters per second, so that's not going to get stopped by something like this, but pretty much everything else is going to be lower than that, and even some APF-SDS's over range are going to get stopped by this too, which is quite fun. It still has the big old composite armor in the front, it has some on the sides too, and it has the model fully upgraded or updated with the FCS and also the stuff in the turret too with the chain guns. So overall pretty cool in my opinion. So this Namer is coming in as an extra vehicle on top of the other ones. It's at 11.0. So it's at a slightly better BR than the Namer 30. At 11.0 you can actually run it with the Mk.IVs a little bit better, which is the problem with the Namer. It's a bit on an island by itself, but this one will make a bit more sense. So a lot of really cool ground vehicles in general for the game. I know a lot of people are going to focus on the Strela and the M44 because obviously there are quite a lot of copy-pasted ones, but there are some really unique ones here too that I think will be pretty fun. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.